Hello out there and welcome to another interesting edition of your weekly political program where we dissect issues of national and international concerns to everyone out there. And this week is going to be, we're not going to have it different from what we've been doing in the past, as we have another important guest on the program that will be taking us through another important issue that we need to take a look at that concerns all the nations across the globe as to how relationship pans out within all these countries. So my guest is no other person than Professor Babafemi Badejo, a political scientist and lawyer who hails from Nigeria. Professor Badejo, prior to his current role as head of political affairs at the United Nations Mission in Liberia, served as Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General for Somalia. He also played a primary role in the design, negotiation, and implementation of the Djibouti initiative that set up national governance structures for Somalia after a decade of civil strife. He has also organized and participated in peace accord negotiations among Somalia leaders that resulted in the Nairobi Declaration of March 1994. And also apart from that, he was at the time a lecturer at Christian University here in Abeokuta, the dean faculty of that. He was the dean of that faculty before he retired when he turned 70. Professor Babafemi Badejo, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back on your program. It's a great pleasure. Let me quickly point something out. I retired as head of political science and not dean. Okay. I had served as on the basis of my being the first professor of political science and international relations at Christland University.
All right, thank you so much for that wonderful update there. Now, let's start this way. You are looking so different. There is a badge on your chest. What does it really mean? But this is not carrying grey, white, green color of Nigeria. And you are Nigerian, but this is a sky blue with a touch of white. So what does it mean?
Well, thank you. I think you had mentioned in the intro that I did play a major role in the Djibouti process, or what is actually called the Alta peace process, named after the city of Alta outside the city of Djibouti in the Republic of Djibouti. I played a fundamental role over 25 years now, because last year was the anniversary of the 25th year. And the president of Djibouti, President Ismail Omar Guelleh, chose to bestow on me the order of 27 June 1977 of the Republic of Djibouti. And that's the badge you are referring to. It was earned as a result of mediation. And when I saw your questions and maybe suggesting that things are no longer necessary to some extent, why do we still have people travel up and down? I thought that I could still make the case by showing that a lot is still done in spite of technology today. Thank you.
Okay, now let's take a look at the topic of the week that we are looking at, talking about how can we bridge diplomatic relations and of course try to enthrone peace all over the world. The world, no doubt, is experiencing a lot of disagreement, a lot of bickerings here and there, and many countries are fighting one another for one reason or the other. So, on tools of diplomacy, from your experience at some of the highest levels of United Nations diplomacy, which diplomatic tools, say mediation, sanctions, economic incentives or military intervention has proven most effective in resolving African conflicts, and which one is most overrated?
Well, invariably, in many of the conflicts that we have faced on the continent, there would be the need to have the possibility of using a multiple number of instruments. You have mentioned some of them. If you take the conflict over apartheid in South Africa, for instance, sanctions that was applied, that sanctions went for a long period of time. At the end of the day, it's wide economy in South Africa, and it was one of the things that made it possible. Of course, we must not denigrate the blood of the martyrs of South Africa. We must not denigrate the role of the United Nations using the anti-apartheid committee, which became Nigeria, more or less like Nigeria's committee on South Africa, because we chaired that committee continuously without anybody contesting, given the role of Nigeria at that period of time. But at the end of the day, mediation was still involved in trying to find solution after F.W. de Klerk decided that it would not be sustainable to continue with apartheid. He encouraged mediation between the ANC, that was the leading there were other smaller efforts, like and quite a number of instruments came into play. Even in that, General Babangida sent at that time, before he became president, to lead a delegation of Nigerians to assist the process and raise the questions of what Nigeria could do when the mediation stalled in terms of the negotiations that were taking place, what we could do to jumpstart and have the ANC led by Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk leading the government at the point, to re-engage again in having the negotiated constitution that they ended up having. So in effect, you cannot dismiss any of the instruments. They still come in very handy depending on the specific situation that one is facing.
But some argue that shuttle diplomacy is outdated in the age we are now, age of communication technology. How do you react to that?
Shuttle diplomacy is not outdated. There is a lot that is still taking place that seriously requires shuttle diplomacy. Maybe a very good illustration would be the role that Pakistan has been playing in trying to get the United States of America / Israel to engage in further dialogue with Iran. And as a result of that, Pakistan had been taking positions of the two parties to each other in their capitals, and the mediator in that situation is trying to facilitate dialogue between two parties who do not want to talk to each other directly. So shuttle diplomacy allows them to come to Pakistan and be able to do contiguous negotiations, maybe different hotels. This party is in this hotel, and the mediator shuttles between, because shuttle diplomacy is not limited to flights only. since you are implying that it is outdated. Of course, the technology that is available today makes things more speedier because it is possible for the American embassy in Islamabad to receive direct secured instructions from Washington and for them to transfer that to the Pakistanis, and for the Pakistanis to take that across. But in some of the cases when everybody returned to their respective capitals and there wasn't anything formal going on the ground, it had involved the Pakistanis moving from their country to Iran, but not limited to because as you know, the neighbors were brought into this particular problem, and the Pakistani Prime Minister went to a number of places in the neighborhood to try to secure support for the work that they are doing, and at a point Qatar sent a delegation to join the efforts of Pakistan. So I'm trying to tell you that, and your listeners, that it is not just correct to rule out shuttle diplomacy. It's still very much needed in different situations. If it's so easy that people can send messages to themselves, yes, they even send some over the media and people pay attention to. So we are having the use of technology to aid the negotiation processes, but we are also having the human person that moves between the parties in carrying out shuttle diplomacy. So shuttle diplomacy did not die with Henry Kissinger, who was very much noted for it at the point in the history of diplomacy, even though shuttle diplomacy had been for centuries, but he put so much effort into it that people started associating it more in our own contemporary times. But the whole diplomacy itself was exactly that, when people had to go to countries and say, this is what my king says to you, Your Majesty, and he sent back either directly or say, okay, my own people, my envoy will come to your king and give my reply. So there is not something that is new, and it's not something that has died.
Okay, given the multiplicity of conflicts affecting regional or, let's say, national security in Africa especially, where lies the input, the functions of institutions like AU, UN, and the rest of that in resolving conflicts of this nature? We have seen what has been happening between US and Iran and, of course, Israel, and up to now that has not been resolved. Not to talk of the one between Russia and Ukraine, which has lasted months now, or if not about 2 or 3 years now, that they've been in conflict, and yet it has not been resolved. So, considering this multiplicity of the threats, so what do they need to do, institutions like UN, AU?
Yes, you have a very I don't know how to how to categorize your question, but it is apt, and it is apt because it comes out of the need to state more clearly what is the role of the United Nations. The United Nations as an organization was set up in 1945 with the countries that were free at that time joining as members, and they set up a structure that involved a Security Council. And that Security Council started with 11 members, currently it's 15 members, but within that structure of the Security Council, they had originally, the US leading those discussions, had originally reserved 5 votes. Those 5 votes were given to the United States, the USSR at the time, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or Soviet Union as popularly called. One was given to China, but at that time it was the Republic of China, not which is now called Taiwan, that had it. It took 1971 when it was finally agreed that the appropriate person, the appropriate entity to have veto was would be the People's Republic of China, headquarters in Beijing. Now, then the remaining 2 were given to the United Kingdom, a very close ally of the United States, as well as France, who was also an ally at the end of the Second World War. And all 3, US, UK, France, still tend to many a time, if not most of the times, think along the same line. And then you have the veto that was given to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was transferred to China when this Union of Soviet Socialist Republics disintegrated in 90 and 91. That it disintegrated. So I am giving you the picture of the fact that the General Assembly meets and it has 193 persons, and they have the power over the purse, in voting money for what needs to be done. But the power to intervene, to get problems solved, to the first party that the Charter of the United Nations gives that responsibility to is the Security Council. Now, I don't want to go into a lot of details because it will affect your timing. That the world, we must understand that we operate within the world in which every individual has interests. And all individuals are packaged together in different countries. And that means that there are different interests by every country in which individuals have been packed together. Now, there are debates on who controls the interests. Is it the president? Is it the people through their parliament? Is it a cabal, the word we use in Nigeria, that determines those interests? But you have to recognize that those interests are very, very important in influencing the decisions that are made. So when you have a problem in the world, you spoke about Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine and Russia, it has not been possible to get the Security Council to agree to carry out anything that would suggest a solution realized by the majority of the people in the General Assembly voting, because Russia and China have their own position. Russia is involved, and they voted against the position of the remaining 3 others. By the same token, Israel has done so much on Gaza, on Lebanon now, with respect to Iran, and any resolution that the 5 permanent members are not agreed upon, whatever the voting of the General Assembly may be, are deadlocked. it's dead on arrival. It's not going anywhere, in as much as either China or Russia disagrees and votes against the Security Council. So in effect, those people are extraordinarily powerful. Even if you have all the 14 other members of the Security Council, the non-permanent members, the Africans have 3 seats, there are 2 seats here, there, whatever. Well, even if they all agree, but one of the permanent members vote against, that's the end. It's dead on arrival. That being the case, the Secretary General, who implements and tries his best to carry out the wishes of the United Nations, and the person you all blame, why is he not doing anything? Why is he not moving forward? What has he done? Why are they fighting, and where is the UN? He cannot do anything because, as General Obasanjo was told when he wanted to be Secretary General of the United Nations, the British permanent representative to the UN at the time told us, I was involved in the process as special assistant to General Obasanjo of that period, that the British told us, what we want, you said you have a general that you are putting forward as Nigeria. They said that to Ibrahim Gambari, who was leading. What we want actually is not a general, it is a secretary. And you know the image of a secretary of that period. Now they don't call them secretary, they call them admin, assistant, or whatever. But they are directed to do this, to do that, like that is who the Secretary General really is. Of course, it's more than that. There are times when the Secretary General flies around and people listen to him. Or times when he appointed people like myself serving on specific problems and working with more senior people in some of the problems, representing him and whatever, to try to get problems solved. And there are many cases in which problems were solved. Mozambique was resolved by the efforts of the United Nations, supported privately by Italy in terms of some of the buying out opposition at that time using the Sant'Egidio brothers. So there are several other things that are done, but there is an expression that I want to leave you with. The UN is as strong as its member states want it to be.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It is the secretary in a union. Yes.
Okay, Prof. Now, let's take a look at this scenario, and you've talked about it. One of the diplomatic tools is the issue of mediation, and that is why institutions like AUUN were established to mediate and bring about peaceful resolution, amicable resolution, so that the two countries, or as many countries that are involved in conflict, can then come back together and interrelate and have to, continue to have joint relationship that could bring about commerce, increase in commerce, increase in volume of trade and what have you. But the issue now is that when you take a look at all of this, still referring to Ukraine-Russia issue, that up to now it has been so difficult to resolve this issue. These two countries have suffered a lot of casualties. It has affected, even beyond their two countries, it has affected some countries globally, and of course it has also raised issues, questions as to why is UN really carrying out its responsibility of bringing about mediation that would then lead to better understanding for the countries involved, parties involved, to now cohabit peacefully. And again, when you look at the issue of US-Iran, it has also affected the entire globe. The issue of crude oil, fuel, that mostly all countries of the world rely on it and more than any other product in the world. So why has UN not been able to bring about an end to this issue?
What I just spoke about, because you are focused on two main issues. There are issues that have lasted more than 50 years, and there are that are still continuing. India and Pakistan, for instance, still there, not resolved. People are there talking on behalf of the United Nations. Excuse me. DRC has been there since the 60s. In fact, it's something that you can date to just the eve of the 60s and has continued since killing of Patrice Lumumba and all the rest of it. That problem is still burning till this moment. Now, what are the interests behind all that? If those interests are not changing their position, because we look at some of these conflicts without going into the material interests that are involved. Billions, trillions of dollars are involved in some of these things, but we focus only on the top of it. However, in some of the cases, as I was trying to point out, in some of the cases of the top of it, actually, I am in Abuja for the purpose of launching a book.
Okay, all right.
For the purpose of launching a book by Abdusalami Abubakar.
Okay.
And the title of the book is Mediating for Peace in Africa. And it details many of the examples of his involvement in several. Okay, he was involved with Thabo Mbeki in trying to resolve the Darfur issue. The Darfur issue has even now grown bigger into a major Sudan problem that is not resolved. But it was also, in the case of Absalami Abubakar, he was involved in Liberia, mediating peace and negotiated the peace that allowed them to have elections at the end of 2005, and the UN supported that. I went there on behalf of the UN as head of political affairs of the mission at the time in 2006. Until today, there is still relative political peace in Liberia compared to what it was in the previous conflicts. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is that we cannot give up on hope. We just need to continue to try. A lot of effort, whether it is Niger or it is Chad, areas in which Absalami Abubakar had played roles that the rest of the country didn't know after he left office. What he was doing around for the African Union and the United Nations, and many people are still doing all that. And the fact of the matter is, we continue to try with the hope that things will work better.
Okay, you are abreast of events in the West African region, in which Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger pulled out of ECOWAS, and of course, due to military intervention in those countries. Will you classify that as being a democratic backsliding, or you want to say that ECOWAS has failed, or is it a temporary setback for the West African bloc? Talk about ECOWAS bloc, that we are trying to come together to integrate, have a common currency which has been on the table for years but has not materialized up to now, and of course to have a kind of transnational trade, moving freely from Nigeria to Ghana without being or necessarily having a diplomatic bottleneck or what have you. So how do you also react to that, Professor?
I feel sad. I feel sad about ECOWAS, and don't know whether to call it a setback, because Nigeria, led by late Professor Adebayo Adedeji, working under the leadership of General Yakubu Gowon. And I'm glad that General Yakubu Gowon said some of that when he was launching his book, because many people outside of Nigeria do not know the role that Adebayo Adedeji played, how crucial it was. Put together ECOWAS. But it appears that our current president started the dismantling of ECOWAS when he issued that threat that he issued of that
Okay. Okay,
was the threat of ECOWAS.
Okay, continue.
But I don't accept that argument. I don't accept that argument for the simple reason that we pay most of the money in ECOWAS. The rest of the people in ECOWAS expected that we were going to also fund that mission that would have run at over $2 billion if it ever got off the ground, because the relationship between our kids and kin, a relationship between Nigeria and Niger will not allow our troops being dynamic in trying to put down the troops in Niger, as France was pushing us to do at the time. And I don't want to go into the role that France has over our foreign policy today, which was not the case since because France had always tried to derail us. It was that threat that was issued that resulted in similar countries who were having military rule, earlier Burkina Faso and Mali, to come together to form the Sahelian states, like a confederacy of the Sahelian states, and they gave notices, and the notice expired, and they left ECOWAS. Now, I am aware of the fact that the former Prime Minister of Guinea, as also the Executive Secretary of ECOWAS, had been involved of late in trying to see if a negotiated settlement, even if it is just cooperation, can be found between the association of, the Sahelian states confederation, if it can be found between them and ECOWAS. Of course, those negotiations are ongoing. I wish them very well. But we were gung-ho on the fact that, the ECOWAS had reached agreement. If there is no democracy, then the person must be suspended and we must revert. Our president went further to say that it will involve military. What military? We weren't having an ECOWAS standby force, and we weren't having the money. And we have done this in other places where we put the money forward. In Liberia, the first former efforts there, what happened? Nobody paid back till today to Nigeria. But let's push money aside. The security of the sub-region is crucial, because the whatever you call them, terrorists, bandits, whatever you call them, or our brothers, as some in Nigeria will call them, fighting the rest, are moving from country to country. And if the countries are not collaborating, then it becomes difficult to operate. And those were the things that Nigeria did not think about when it went on that gung-ho. We're going to come to remove you from office that was threatened, before we found out that we didn't have the capacity to do anything, and we got Gawan and the rest of them to try to see if they can bring the tempo down. Okay, as I said, but you also spoke about whether this constitutes democratic backsliding or whatever you call it. You and I have been on your other program before, and we have talked about this issue of democracy. Democracy is not because some people pretend and deceive that they are having elections. Democracy is much, much more than that. More crucial for democracy is the fact that people are being served, that the lives of people are improving, that they are able to satisfy one of the major freedoms, the freedom to live. And you cannot live if you cannot eat. You have just probably some 64 days or something you will be dead. So a crucial portion of the freedoms we seek is the freedom to live, which involves being able to breathe, because you die in less than 10 minutes if you can't breathe. And the water, the freedom to drink. If you are unable to drink, you should be dead in a few days. You can't go beyond 28 to 30 days. So all those things that are crucial are more important for people than the question of they have gone to vote. And let's not even talk about Nigeria, because we have talked about all this on your program several times over and over. We don't have political parties that are developmental in Nigeria. We only have shifting alliances of thieves in Nigeria. They move from one party to the other, and what do? They are looking for how to steal as much from the people, not service to the people. So what is the democracy that you are talking about? It's important before you pontificate about whether we are having a democratic slide back. Did we even have democracy is what I'm saying on the subcontinent or on the continent. Very few people, very few countries are delivering the purpose of governance. The purpose of governance is to meet the utmost freedom of people, which involves many things beyond just eating, but eating and drinking and breathing being the core. Because without all that, you will die. But the question of being able to assemble in an association is also important, because we are not animals. Because the animals in the zoo get a lot of food in the zoo. But it's not, if we try to empathize, they cannot be happy because they are not able to roam all over as they used to, even though you give them more food than they will be fighting for. So since we are not animals, all those other freedoms, freedom of association, are also very important. Freedom of participation in how you are governed is also very important. But we cannot take that and use just election, which is a small part of that participation arrangement, and use it to deceive people that they are in a democracy when they are not getting enough to eat.
Okay, Prof. Now,
I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yeah, you have done justice to that as well. You have even touched on another area, which of course is so crucial to the topic we are taking a look at. I mean, having democracy in place, and of course democracy working and functioning very well for people of such a given society or given country, so that they can enjoy what democracy is all about. But now when we look at insecurity started like a joke, and it's gone it's like a Wi-Fi now that is ravaging virtually almost everywhere you look, you turn to in the world. Now, when we come down to Africa, it's also not, we cannot say it's not also happening in Africa. It's also ravaging Africa, and some countries are paying duly for it. Now, what has been the role of African Union in nipping this in the bud? It started like a joke, as I said, but today it's like a wildfire that even governments of a nation in some countries are not being able to tackle it headlong and get a good result out of that. And insecurity continues to ravage such countries.
Responsibility for security belongs to the government of where you are. The government of where you are holds the responsibility to secure life. It is under the 1999 Constitution, clearly well written. So you should be asking, why do we have government if it cannot perform? Before you go to the level of the African Union, the government holds the first responsibility, the responsibility to protect. That's another name that it is called, the responsibility to protect citizens. So you can judge governments, and it's not a problem of just this government, but you said it has been on for long. It started more or less since we went into your so-called democratic dispensation. It started with the talks of we must have Sharia, we will not have Sharia, and then little by little Boko Haram started, and the attempt to try to deal with Boko Haram at those initial stages resulted in the killing of the founder and the reactions that we have faced ever since. Down the line. So I'm saying that it's not a problem of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu alone. But all of them have failed woefully in being able to provide security in Nigeria. It used to be concentrated in the northwest, and the northeast, northwest, on the north central in terms of ethnicities within these portions. And then it's from north central now, it has gone to the southwest. The southeast of Nigeria has always been a problem of its own, of a different sort. IPOP, ESN, all those ones have been there. They may be a little bit less now compared to before, suggesting some efforts to try to handle them. So I'm saying, before you go to African Union, you have to put your own house in order strongly, that a government is expected to govern. And why is it not governing? Why is it not able to protect? What are the interests? What is the role of leadership deficit in this? What is the role of corruption in this? Whether it's in the procurement of arms and those who are benefiting from the procurement of arms not wanting any change, and the situation continuing. So I'm kind of I don't know how to put it, but let's leave the national level. It is not correct that there hasn't been international efforts. I think I was there in January 2018, I believe, when the African Union set up the multinational joint task force headquartered in Chad. The multinational joint task force was supposed to go after Boko Haram and make it difficult for them to move from Nigeria into Niger, from Niger dash into Cameroon or dash into to Chad and all the rest of it, and wreak havoc in all these countries. Of course, that entity has not also shown it's to some extent trying to fight all that. Then it was to fight the situation of peace and so the problem is not about to be solved. The United Nations has been trying such things as we must fight the terrorists and trying to find ways to handle that, but it is still a problem that is very much there. And of course, maybe more could be done, but it's also important to look into what are the interests behind the continuation. People say Abacha said something that if an upheaval or whatever you call it lasts more than is it 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever, know that the government is involved. I don't know.
Okay.
But I'm saying we need to deal further. We need to deal with physician, heal thyself, before we start looking at whether the African Union is set up. Because the African Union and the United Nations, they have no military power other than what their members contribute.
All right.
They don't have a standing army.
Okay, Paul. Is this how peace will continue to elude the world, despite all efforts being channeled towards mediation, towards sanctions and what have you, to make sure that countries cohabit peacefully and have interrelations that will bring about development, bring about infrastructural development and what have you. So is this how peace will continue to elude the world?
What I can say is that we must not give up. We must continue to try to see how we can come up with instruments that will help in the realization of peace. But there is no doubt that peace is elusive in some of the situations. But we must also accept that since 1945, we have avoided a third world war. So that is important. Yes, there have been several pockets. There was a time when even Africa was, every part of the sub-regions in Africa was in upheavals. Some of those are still there. The Gambia and its own Senegal, and having to deal with some of the Casamance. The Casamance situation is still there. A number of others that have continued to last since long ago. But I pointed out that we have been able to solve some. Sierra Leone was resolved and it's relatively been peaceful since then. Liberia was resolved. It's relatively, well, maybe I'm wrong to say resolved, but a lot of effort went into turning a very live physical situation into more of a manageable situation where mediation, dispute resolution arrangements in those countries are taking place. I mentioned Mozambique earlier on. Somalia is neither here nor there, but it's better than what it was at the beginning of the 90s. Today, after Djibouti set a framework to repackage the country. So it is not all negative or through. There are some successes that are continuing. There are disputes that you are not even aware of. There were basketball, but who got involved and put resolve the football. So we continue to put in efforts.
Okay, Paul.
Yes.
All right, so Paul, we are almost cutting them on the program. But before we go, I would like you to share your thoughts with us on this. For so many decades, we have seen the males dominate Secretary Generalship of UN. Now we have 3 females in the front burner, trying to become Secretary General of United Nations after Antonio Guterres. What will be your submission here?
I don't know what to tell you. I will very much be happy if this time a female Secretary General who is very capable, because being capable is much more important than just being female. And some of the candidates you have mentioned have shown that they have done very well in their past. Bachelet was a former president, and a president who everybody was crying when she was going out of office. Madame Espinosa had also played a role as vice president in Costa Rica, and also had had sat at the United Nations Assembly. Greenspan is sovereignty. I'm not looking at the current head of IAEA, a male, who is also showing interest. You will also know that Macky Sall of Senegal put himself on the whatever, even though Africa did not agree that he should go into the race, but he's still there. I was reading about the most recent debate that they did in Palais des Nations Unies in Geneva, that he had sent video when it was when the women were having a debate. But something that is very important, it is not you and I or your TV program that will decide who will be the Secretary General. It is the 5 permanent members who have the veto. It is who they finally agree will be the Secretary General that will be the Secretary General. It's even possible for them to agree on somebody who is not yet in this popular contest that people are doing on television. A very good example was the experience of the first time when Africa was pushing to have an African to be the Secretary General, and they settled for Salim Ahmed Salim. Great that he is still alive. And at the last minute, it was clear that the Americans will never accept Salim Ahmed Salim. And what happened? The United States brought Perez de Cuellar last minute, and everybody agreed on Perez de Cuellar because Africa was not ready to substitute Salim. Yes.
All right, okay,
you wanted to say something.
Okay, yeah, but we are about to draw the curtain on the program, and that's why I'm trying to interject you there and say a big thank you for finding time to be with us and share your thoughts on the program this week. And we want to really appreciate you that when next we also call on you, you'll be available for us on this network to talk about national and international issues that affect every one of us across the globe. So we thank you so much, and we wish you well, particularly as we are in Abuja there to partake in the launch of that book, talking about entrenching democracy that you talked about, that former head of state in Nigeria, talking about General Abubakar Salam, is about to push to the public space so that people can also read it up and get one or two things from there that will further ensure there is peace across the globe. So Professor Babafemi Badejo, we thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you.